Here's a special important message.
Hello there. Welcome to We Are the Road Crew, the podcast about live music and particularly how the gigs that you go to and that you enjoy come together. My name is Stephen Hill. I am your host as ever. This is episode 16 from season 2 of the show, and we have a cracking show coming up for you today if you are, like myself, a bit of a fan of the old heavy metals. Before we kick off, I would just like to say a big thank you to Signature Brew, who have been giving us some fantastic support all throughout series 2 of the podcast. Go over to signaturebrew.co.uk and you can have a little browse through all of their wonderful beverages that they make. We'll even give you 10% off of all of their beers if you use the code ROADCREW in the checkout. You will probably be aware of Signature Brew from many music venues from up and down the country. They've been making music-inspired beers since 2011, collaborating with bands such as Mastodon, Idol, Slaves, Ent Shikari, Mogwai, many more. You know the rest. And they do many a drink, including the Nightliner Coffee Porter, which shares its name with the Nightliner sleeper buses, which are commonly used by a lot of touring bands. There is the equivalent in one of those cans to a shot of espresso. So, you know, if you're lagging come the end of the night, smash down one of those Nightliner Coffee Porter cans, or do drink responsibly, but, you know, get one of them and that'll definitely keep you going. Trust me. They're very nice as well. I've never had a coffee beer before, but they're really good. Anyway, on with the show. This week, our guest is a gentleman by the name of Steve Lagudi, who is a live sound engineer and has been working within the realms of heavy metal for a very, very long time. He has actually done many things. I mean, we're going to talk about his whole career and his life in general. I know I've just found out he used to be a firefighter, so we'll definitely talk to him about that. But he has worked with a lot of the big name bands in metal from over the last pretty much 35 years or so. So you're looking at bands like Napalm Death, Sepultura, Possessed, Municipal Waste, Mayhem, Shadows 4, Five Finger Death Punch, God Forbid, Bruguera, Vision of Disorder, Il Nino, Exodus. He's done loads and loads of bands from that world, which is obviously, if you listen to the podcast on the reg, you'll know that I'm a massive fan of all of those bands. But mostly what he's been doing over the last few years is he is the live sound engineer for Machine Head, who are one of my favourite metal bands of all time. I'm really, really interested to get to know from Steve about the kind of mechanics of working with Machine Head. So cannot wait to talk to him about how Rob Flynn runs that ship and what it's like working for, you know, such an interesting character as Rob Flynn. That's about to come up. As I should say, I'm sort of sat in the dining room here, not in a proper studio. You can probably hear my creaky old wicker chair. Usually we record right in the centre of London at Factory Studios, and after the pandemic ends, hopefully that is where we're going to be back. Go and give us some love on the social channels as well if you don't mind. It's at Road Crew Pod if you want to get it. Shoot us a tweet. You can find us also on Facebook. You can find us on Instagram, and if you'd like to leave a review on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts, we would be hugely appreciative of that. Do give a 5, because I think this is obviously a free show. If you're giving anything less than a 5, you just come across as not that nice a person, to be perfectly honest. But anyway, enough of my going on and judging you. This is me talking to Steve Lagudi. All right, Steve, you join us from New York, I believe.
Yeah, in New York right now. It's hot as shit, but you guys would love it. It's a taste of home from the UK. It's dark and grey, and but it's still hot. So But,
do you know what? We've got exactly the same thing going on. It is absolutely teeming it down outside. But as you can see, and I'm glad that the people listening can't see,
yeah.
I'm a sweaty mess. We're in the middle. We're in the middle of the most insane heat wave. My girlfriend's from South Carolina. Apparently, it's hotter over here at the moment than it is in Beaufort, South Carolina, which is insanity.
Yeah, that's weird because usually the south this time of year, it's just, as I like to call, Africa hot, man. The humidity, East Coast is known for that. And especially these last 2 weeks, I've been getting gear ready in my garage. Like, I mean, just walking into that damn thing, I'm sweating like a pig. And I don't normally sweat. So, yeah.
Well, yeah, it don't take, I just have to lift up a chocolate bar and I'm sort of drenched in sweat anyway. I'm a big, fat, sweaty mess. But anyway, enough about me and my sweat glands. We don't want to talk about that. We'll talk about you. How have you been getting on? Obviously, we've been asking people as the series has gone on what they've been up to and how they've been coping with the kind of COVID-19 crisis. Yep. Obviously, it's affected everyone. I mean, what's your story? How's it been for you?
Yeah, well, I've been kind of flying below the radar. You know, people have been hitting me up every now and then like, dude, what are you up to? Like, you know, they're just figuring I just been dark because we haven't really been touring. But the truth of the matter is it's just been so busy behind the scenes because of the whole COVID thing with Machine Head. I mean, we still had a whole, you know, world tour still that needed to happen for Machine Head. We were, you know, we finished up the US tour in February and I was getting things ready to ship over to Europe, and I was going to come back to New York for a few days and then go back to California, get the gear shipped over to Europe. And on the U.S. tour, actually, we had the COVID. We had a couple of shows canceled because Rob was sick, Logan was sick, and basically the tour aides, as we call it, like everybody had it. And, you know, we had heard the grumblings about the COVID and, you know, we didn't know that it was coming over, you know, to the state. Like it wasn't anything major. It was like, okay, something was going on, you know, but you just kind of, you know, like when you're on tour, the real world just kind of disappears, basically, well, at least for me.
Yeah, of course.
But ultimately, everybody had it. I was the only person that dodged that bullet, or if I had it, I didn't have any symptoms. Our tour manager, Luke, who's actually from the UK, he had it like really bad. And then weeks later, going back, he ended up getting submitted into the hospital, and he tested positive for it. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah, so with what was going on, and you know, there was a lot of the other Bay Area metal bands that were over in Europe, and I'm obviously friends with a lot of those guys and bands and crew, you know, and hearing, you know, kind of what was going on. And then towards the end of that, like this tour, it was like some Bay Area tour, so it was like Exodus and Testament and Death Angel, and we started hearing that like some of the shows were getting shut down. So talking with our agent at the time, seeing what was going on, it was like, hey, all right, this show is going to probably get canceled. And then it just started this huge domino effect. So we're talking with Rob. I was like, you know what, why don't we jump on postponing this tour now? Let's do it, you know, try to reschedule it for the fourth quarter, because I'm like, if things are going to start getting canceled, everybody and their mother is going to be scrambling to do the same shit, especially if the summer festivals get canceled. You know, a lot of these bands are going to need to go out and, you know, try to fill dates and routing, you know, whether it's just a normal tour or something like the coronavirus, routing is difficult to do. So we were able to jump on it, and we kind of like mirrored, you know, basically the tour that we were going to do. We had like 4 routings we ended up going back and forth with, and we figured it all out. So as you could expect, I mean, that took time, you know, to kind of go back and forth and do that shit. So over those months, it was really, okay, let's plan on this. Okay, here's option B. You know, like there's so much that happens behind the scenes to put a tour on. Like people just don't get it, you know. And for me, not only just the front of house guy, but the production manager, you know, the guy in charge of the crew. I mean, dealing with literally everything for that band. You know, there was a lot to discuss. I mean, trucks and buses. I mean, everything you could possibly imagine that goes into doing a tour. We had to try to like figure out a game plan, because let's be honest. I mean, none of us thought that this COVID was going to be what it turned out to be, and it's mental.
No,
you know?
No, not many people did. No.
Yeah. So I'm like, all right, yeah, you know, a couple of months, this will blow over, and you know, everything will go back to usual. But as we can see now, that is certainly not the case. So I would say about 2.5, 3 weeks ago, we finally made the decision. All right, everything for 2020 is just not happening. Like, you know, we had the travel ban. Like, we were really waiting, you know, seeing what could have happened. Because we had Australia coming up for September. And that part of the world was a few months ahead of like where the US was, you know, and hearing like New Zealand didn't have any cases. And it was like, okay, because we had a show for New Zealand, and it was like, okay, maybe there's a reality of this that we can go and do this. So we really wanted to wait and try to do it. But as everybody knows, I mean, it's just not happening. So we ended up having to, you know, do all the behind the scenes stuff to go ahead and pull the plug on all these tours, unfortunately. And, I'm not even kidding you, like 10 minutes, if that, was kind of when I got the phone call from Gary Holt. I got voluntold that, you know, that I was going to go and do the next recording for Exodus's record. So that's kind of what I've been busy with, like I said, these last 2-3 weeks, getting things ready, sweating my ass off, getting my entire mobile studio gear put together to freight, which just got picked up 2 days ago. So it's on its way to California, and we start that on the 27th. So, well,
that's exciting. Yeah. I mean, that's super exciting.
Yeah.
Really. Like, yeah, new Exodus, fucking great.
Yeah. And, you know, and like, well, how it came about was Andy Sneap, who's done the last few records, and, you know, me and Andy have worked together on a lot of Machine Head stuff, you know, because most people don't know I've, you know, basically did the entire Bloodstone and Diamonds records on the road. And Colin mixed most of it, but then he had to drop off because we went way over time on the schedule. And then we had to get Andy to kind of step in. And with the travel restrictions, Andy couldn't get on an airplane to go out to California to do it. So they just kind of like forgot about that, and then just realized that, wait, he can't travel. So both Andy and Gary were like, well, give Lagudi a call. So, you know, not that I talk to Gary very often, it's mostly social media and stuff like that. And, you know, I see my phone. I'm like, hey, what's up? He's like, dude, what are you doing at the end of September, end of August? And before I could even say anything, he's like, you're doing nothing because you're going to be recording the next Exodus record. And I'm just like, okay.
Nice.
So, yeah, it's pretty exciting to be in a room with, you know, Tom Hunting and Gary Holt. You know, because it's a trust thing, you know, and a vibe, you know, not just a guy that could just run Pro Tools, you know. You can imagine a band like that with, you know, the type of background that they have and being set in their ways of doing what they do. It's, you know, they don't trust too many people to kind of be in that room with them. So for me, it's like, holy shit, you know, it's pretty
exciting.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a rare positive story to come out of the sort of COVID thing that we've been talking about recently on the show. I mean, that's cool.
Yeah, for sure.
But to go back, to go right back, Steve.
Yeah.
Actually, there's one thing I'm going to do. Like, normally I go right back to the start of a career and I don't talk about people's career and what they've just done. Then we go through kind of chronologically. There's one show that I need to talk to you about because you work with Machine Head a lot, and I'm assuming you were there that night at Brixton Academy, Burn My Eyes tour. That fucking dude, whoever threw that pint glass, somebody threw a pint glass during Burn My Eyes and it stopped the whole set dead.
Yeah.
I have to ask because, oh my God, it was insufferable as a fan to be stood there just being like, if I catch that guy, and I know Rob from the stage was like, if you see that guy, get him. What was that like? Like, what was that like? That was, how frustrating is that?
You know, it like the beer throwing thing happens a lot, you know, and I mean, not just Machine Head shows. I mean, a lot of other friends and stuff like that shit happens. You know what I mean? And what I don't understand is you go to the show and you spend probably a fuck ton of money on, well, especially the UK, the proper UK pint. You know, I can't even begin to imagine how much that costs. That's got to be like 15 pounds probably, if I had to guess. Like, I don't buy drinks. So, I mean, like, I don't know how much it is, but to like go
I think they're about £8.
All right.
About £8.
Either way,
it's still a lot.
But you're going to go up. You're going to give them money. They're going to give you this ginormous cup, and then you're just going to look at it and you just go, I can't comprehend that. But at the same time, too, why are you going to throw it at the equipment? You know that it's just literally it's just going to bring the show to a stop. You know, not only for you, but the bands and everybody else there. So it's like the biggest douche move on the planet, not to mention this shit ain't cheap, man. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, we have insurance and stuff like that, but, you know, that derails a tour. You know, like, there's so much that goes into that. So I cannot wrap my head around why people would want to sabotage a show. But for London, what I don't even get is it was the song, like we were in Death Church, and it's not even like, you know, a raging one. You know, usually at the beginning, especially in like Germany, it's like as soon as the intro to Imperium comes on, like shit starts flying, people are freaking out. You know, we have the plastic ready to go to throw over the consoles and stuff like that. And you could kind of tell. And usually after you get 2-3 songs in, you could kind of be like, oh, okay, the crowd's a little bit chill, you know. And I purposely choose to always go to the back, man. Like, I don't need to be down in the front. Like, let the kids be down there, man, you know, and rage it up and all that shit. So, and at Brixton, you know, front of house is like all the way in the back. And that's all the old people, the guys that don't want to get, you know, involved in the shit. And everybody's just standing there chilling. And I don't really look up, but I'm just looking at my screen. And here came this beer. And it hit right in between the two monitors. Like, there's like a little well in there. And it landed upside down. So as quick as I was able to grab it, gravity just took over. And it filled it like a pool. And I just looked at the system tech, and I'm just going, this shit's going off. Like, these desks can take a beating, but with that amount of liquid, there's no way. Because people are like, oh, you know, if this desk wouldn't have happened, I don't care what console, analog, digital, whatever, you put that much liquid in a console, it's going down somehow. So, yeah, so immediately was tearing the shirt off, trying to soak the beer up and all that other stuff, and getting ready to prepare for the show to go off. And that's kind of what happened. I'd say the desk it held on for probably almost a full 2 minutes before it shut down. And I have a monitor console obviously on stage and stuff, and we have a router on that. And basically I did the in-ear mixes for the band. Like, we have a monitor guy, and he kind of like babysits and does a few things, but like tonally, like EQ and, you know, gain, compression, gating, all that stuff. It's there. So it's just like fader moves and mutes and things like that the monitor guy is doing. But it basically mirrors the front of house mix for the most part, as far as the sounds and settings. Like, my band and like most bands, like, they love to hear a good monitor mix kind of sound like a front of house mix. So it kind of made sense. Okay, load the settings, and it was like, go from there. And these guys were just like, holy shit. So the top surface of the console for the left and right bus is basically that backup. But what took us so long to get the show back up and running was I could not get my iPad to connect to that console to save my life. So in reality, we could have probably had the show up in 3 minutes as opposed to 15, because I had to kind of do a quick line check because we were bypassing everything, no processing, nothing. It was straight into the PA. So we kind of had to bring some stuff in slowly and do that quick line check, and to make sure things were cool, and trying to do it by like radio. It took a little bit longer, but we were able to pull it off.
Yeah, I remember looking at my watch and being like, we're all supposed to be going home now. I mean, like, they're strict with curfews in that venue. You know, and I was a bit like, I'm wondering if we're even going to get block. I don't know if we are.
We were, and you know what was really cool, and I have to give this to the people at the Brixton Academy. Like, they allowed us to finish the show. All of the people that were working, like, agreed to like stay. And I don't know if this is 100% true or not, but they were like, oh yeah, we're not going to pay extra for any of that and stuff, like, you know, so they were really, really behind having us continue the show. You know, the actions of one dickhead, you know, trying to ruin it for everybody. So we got to finish the show at, you know, and it's unfortunate, but more importantly, like, it's just really, you got to make the show happen. And
yeah,
years of experience and years of touring, and never being the headlining guy, and throw and go, and never getting line checks or looking at a console, you know, unless it's 2 minutes before walking up to it. Like, all of that, you know, experience kind of came in, and just staying calm and cool. Like, even Nicholas, our lighting guy, like later it was the next day, because no one wanted to come near me that night. He was like, how the fuck did you stay so cool, calm, and collective? And I'm like, you have to. If you're going to freak out, nothing's going to change. You're going to be in the same spot that you were like 2 minutes ago. So just keep your wits about you, focus on what you got to do, and put the show on. And that's really what it all came down to. So
yeah.
You know,
it's good advice.
Yeah.
Don't throw fucking drinks at shows from the back.
Yeah,
please. I know I've said it before. I know I've said it on the podcast before. Don't. You've just heard it from the horse's mouth how difficult it was to deal with that. Don't throw drinks. All right, I'm sure no one listens.
And
to
it's
this
like
does,
crazy that we even
drinks.
have to say that. Like, really?
Yeah.
But I got to say, the crowd though was really cool. Like, the people around front of house. I mean, and it's normal. Like when people are at front of house, I'll look up every now and then, and people are looking at me more than the show sometimes. You know, because like I'm always mixing. I never let the desk go and stuff like that. And these people were pulling out phones and like trying to help out. People are offering T-shirts, dudes going to the bar to get napkins and stuff like that. And I mean, that was really cool to kind of see, you know, kind of people stepping up and in a situation like that. It was kind of cool, you know, but unfortunate, you know, but they never did find the guy.
He is the most wanted man in the UK.
He or she, you don't know who it could have been.
Yeah.
And that's like I said, what I don't get, it wasn't even that deep of many people behind me, and everybody was just kind of standing there hanging, and it just like perfect. Like this was like the $1 million shot. So there was no security cameras covering that area because trust me, we looked. And but yeah, you know, so don't fucking throw beers.
No, don't. All right. Anyway, let's go right back to the very, very start. We always ask our guests at the very, very sort of beginning of the podcast what the first time they remember being kind of inspired by music was, or what the first gig they ever went to was and how that affected them. So for you, Steve, when do you remember first becoming very passionate about music?
That was probably at 3 years old.
Well, okay.
You know, just loving music and just kind of being interested in all that stuff. And, you know, taking music in school, like the first instrument, playing violin and shit. And then I was probably about, I don't even know, 8 years old when Metallica entered my world. And it's like, what is this? And that changed my life. So that was it. At that point, there was no other music I would listen to. That was everything that I cared about as far as music is concerned. So becoming like a huge super fan to like learning how to play bass and all that other stuff, to fast forward years later going out and meeting the band so many times and they get to know your name. And then it was like, hey, you're always around. Like, dude, you want a job? And I had no idea what that meant. And I was like, okay. And basically I was doing like fan club stuff, like for the meet and greets and all that shit. So, you know, this was kind of like when the internet, wow, Jesus, I sound old. This was kind of like when the internet was really kind of coming out. And this guy, Nicholas, who was working for the band, he started this Met on Tour website. And that was like all the behind the scenes stuff, you know, from days off and, you know, warming up in the jam room or stuff in the studio. And, you know, he's running all around and like, you know, here's a camera, you know. So it was one day, it was the Summer Sanitarium tour in 2000. I think it was like the second show of that. And it was in New England, up in Maine or whatever it was, and I had to film the show from front of house, and I'm standing there looking down at Big Mick, like waiting for him to, you know, roll the intro so I could hit record on this camera on a tripod. And as I'm looking down there, I'm going, wow, like that's really, you know, that looks really fucking cool. And I actually have a photo that I took of him in front of the XL4 and all this other stuff. And a few weeks ago, I did a Midas video chat, and then we shared that photo, which was pretty funny. And it, you know, has the date and all that stuff. And fast forward years later, it was like regrouping again and getting back in touch with Big Mick. It was like, hey, you know, I got that photo from the day that it was like, that's what I wanted to do, you know. But it's a huge, long road, man. I mean, from meeting the band that kind of just made you feel alive to going out and working and, you know, and ultimately befriending some of those people, you know, like Jason and stuff like that. I mean, who I talk to and whatnot, you know, from time to time. Don't try to bother, you know, these dudes too much. But, you know, seeing James was about 2 years ago now, a couple times. You know, he came out to a show in Berlin on a day off, and then we had a day off when we were in the States, and we went out and hung out and stuff. And, you know, it's it's kind of crazy to go full circle like that, you know, to going from like the top of the mountain, then to the bottom of the barrel where I went out on my own and then worked my way back around the Bay Area, like doing all the other Bay Area bands, like, you know, Exodus and Testament and Death Angel and Machine Head and stuff. And it's like, you know, to kind of totally come full circle would be to go do front of house for Metallica. So, which would be,
I'm sure. Yeah. That's got to be the goal, surely.
Yeah, of course it would be. You know what I mean? Like that, I don't know. There would be nothing better, man. Like for me, that's shit. I'd do the gig for free. I mean, it's unreal.
And where and how did this kind of journey start? Because I think I read somewhere from something that my producer sent me that originally, or at some point, you were working as a firefighter.
Yeah, I was doing that. You know, I did a lot of jobs, man. I've done it all. Okay. Insurance agent, firefighter, cook, you know, flying planes, not for money though, but,
right. Okay.
You know, those were all the things. It was, you know, Metallica would always tour and I would always get these cool, like really awesome, you know, career jobs, you know, making shit tons of money. And then it'd be like, oh, Metallica is going to go do 2 months. It's like, okay, I'm going to go and quit that job and go out on tour, you know, and basically make no money. Cause I didn't really care about money, you know, like I get it. Money's important, of course, but like if you let it drive you, I really don't think you're going to be happy. You know, that cliche line, like, you know, if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. Is sort of true, but that's really what it was. It was like, I just would constantly quit all these jobs. Like I like interesting things. And, you know, I'd be like, okay, I want to do that, achieve that goal. I was like, okay, I did it, move on, go on to the next thing. And the one thing that I always just loved doing was just constantly music, like traveling around the world, you know, going into some of the greatest venues to the shittiest venues, meeting all these different people from all sorts of, you know, walks and backgrounds and all of that experience and being paid to do it. It's like pretty fucking awesome, you know, and the resume just kept building and building and building. And, you know, like you can't make up half the friggin' stories, like of who you get to work with and the stuff you're involved with. And that's going to live on forever, you know, like way long after I'm dead and buried. So absolutely. Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
So as a young kid, you know, kind of being obsessed with Metallica, really, really loving music, was there a point where you looked at the people kind of on the side of the stage or the people doing the sound and thought, that might be something that I could do? Or did you just, you know, how did you kind of fall into that? Yeah,
that's like I said, it was when constantly going to the Metallica shows and just hanging out after the show. That's really what it was. It was like, hey, you want to come and do this? And I was 18. Wow. Yeah. You know, a couple months basically out of high school. Was like, okay, sure, go do that. You know, I had no idea what it was, you know, what it entailed. And then it was like, wow, this is pretty cool. You know, like you know, it's Groundhog Day. Basically, you're doing the same shit every day, but like having that exposure to the fans, because being a fan, it was like, it was common ground. So you could kind of, like, I was fortunate enough, like I said, to meet these guys so much that these kids were coming up to, you know, get, you know, a backstage pass, you know, and go and meet the band. Like I could connect with that. And I'm like, okay, now I'm out here doing it. And then, but seeing the other technical side of it and just how much went into it, like, you know, backline guys and then the lighting and the audio, like all of that stuff. I mean, it's an army of people moving around, putting on these productions, you know, as well as local crews. And it's like, this is really cool. And to be a part of something like that, to help put on a show for all those people to come and enjoy is amazing. And sound, just like I said, it looked really cool to me. You know, at that moment I was always tinkering with stuff, and that's kind of really what it was standing there looking over his shoulder and like trying to figure out what it is that he was doing. You know, it was like, that sounds fucking awesome, I want to be able to do that. And I haven't looked back.
What were the steps that you first took after that to try and kind of get yourself into that position? Like I guess the early tours, the learning process of how you actually approached making a band sound good?
Well, actually, it was funny because it was like, as I started getting into it, this was the summer of 2000. Right after that, that was when Jason had quit Metallica. And, we all know what happened, with them. They basically kind of just disappeared and went off into their own thing during that period of time. And I was like, okay, I kind of want to maybe be in a band or do something with it. And I did. And I ended up getting this rehearsal place, buying the room next door, and then turned it into like a little control room and went out and got like one of the first editions of Pro Tools, which at the time was like Sound Designer. And I was kind of like doing stuff in studios here on the island and whatnot, and was always tinkering. And I was like, well, got like a Mackie board and a bunch of microphones and shit like that. And I'm like, I can figure this out. Sure. Turning my own knobs. And then one day this band down the hall, like knocked on the door and was like, hey, we'll give you $500 to record five of our songs. And I'm like, all right, sure. I'm like, I'll fuck up your shit before I go to record my band. Like, this is perfect. And you're paying me for it. And that's really what it was. It was just figuring it out. And I basically did the first two like demos that got some bands signed. And one of them is like a Muir and stuff like that. And, so like friends that kind of knew what was going on were like, you got a natural ear for this. Like, you should probably do it. And like 2 or 3 months later, I was doing another band and they're like, hey, we're going to play Bob's Bar tonight. Like, come down and mix our show. Because these kids were all like tripping out over the clicky sounding kick drum, like you go to like some, small venue or whatever, the front of house guy doesn't know how to make, a metal kick drum sound like a metal kick drum and stuff like that. So, and that's kind of what had happened. And then, no shit, probably 2 months after that, a friend of mine who was working at a venue couldn't do this gig, and Vision of Disorder, VOD, they were going to do a farewell DVD shoot, and it was a Friday and a Sunday. And then on the Saturday, they had like a club night. So this dude basically wanted me to be the house guy just to make sure that the PA didn't get blown up and everything was cool, like particularly for the DJ night and stuff like that. And so I ended up having to like take over the recording and like mixing the VOD thing. And then ironically, the first band was the local opener was like a band I had just did their demo and line checked them. And then the drummer was like, dude, can I like play the drums with the PA on? I'm like, yeah, go ahead. And that was like when the band God Forbid come walking through the door. And they had been to this venue and it was a shithole. And then talking to Byron, the front dude, like later on, we're outside, talking, and everybody in my band loved God Forbid. So, I was just like, hey, cool. And he's like, who do you work for? And I was like, oh yeah, I tour with Metallica. And Byron, like, word, like he couldn't believe it. So he took my number. And then a few months after that, they called me up to go out and mix. It was like 4 or 5 shows in the Midwest, and we're in the van, and, they're hearing that I do like studio stuff. And then it was like, okay, hey, come and do our pre-production. And I rolled the whole fucking studio in there, and they're like, why are we going to go to a studio? Like, we got it here. And that was kind of how it happened. That was Earth's Blood. And then going out and doing those tours on Mayhem. And then it just basically, it was always somebody else hearing my mix and calling me or coming up and approaching me like, hey, like, we want to sound like that. And it kept happening, El Nino, Shadows Fall, like it just kept going on and on and on. And that still to this day is just kind of how it is. People come to a show and just go, holy fuck, I want to sound like that. And that's it. And, the question is, I get asked this by kids all the time. Like, what do I do to get noticed? And honestly, when I mix a show, and I have no qualms about this, when I'm mixing it for me. If I have to sit there, like particularly for Machine Head for 3.5 hours a night, I want it to sound good. If I'm into the band or not, like, I'm doing this for me. So that's really what it is. And fortunately, people like how, what it is that I do. And that's, you never know who's in the audience, man. Like, I had no idea you were even at the London show. So you never know who's going to be there. And that's pretty much the way, like, there's no secret way. Like, that's how it works for me. bottom line. That's it.
It was an exciting time as well when that kind of time you're talking about, mentioning bands like Shadows Fall, God forbid. I mean, I have to say, Vision of Disorder, man, what a fucking band that band were. I absolutely love that band still to this day. Imprint, and the self-titled, just such a great underrated band they were.
It's funny, I was just with Matt yesterday. He lives here on Long Island and stuff like that, and I had to go drop some stuff off to him and shit. And it's weird, like, coming from New York, like, there's some famous people that come out of Long Island and whatnot, and it's there's a few of the bands that are around, and but it's funny that I never see these people, and I don't really tour with them. Like, the only other band that I know from Long Island is like Suffocation, and like, we know of each other, and I've met them like once, and I think that was like in San Juan or somewhere. It was somewhere in Central America at some festival, and I was down there doing Mayhem, and these guys flew in and ran into them outside the hotel smoking a cigarette, and so it's just weird. Like, there's a lot of cool bands that I got to work for, so.
What was that time like for you as a kind of like a working sort of sound guy during, I guess, what would be termed as the kind of the new wave of American heavy metal, when that stuff kind of broke big from, I guess, Lamb of God and Killswitch Engage and all the bands that you mentioned after that? It felt like, I hate to be that guy, but proper metal, quote unquote proper metal, the real sort of the genuine old school sound of what metal used to sound like before new metal had come along, started getting really popular. And it was cool to see people from the hardcore scene and from the underground scene on MTV. I think that's and that what you've just said about the fact that word of mouth can take you all over the world. That's I guess that's what happens in the underground and the hardcore scene. You pull people.
Yeah, and it, like, the relation for me as like a music guy and their kind of path. It's like we're the same thing. Like we have a goal, we're just doing our thing, and and it just luckily, the spotlight got put onto it and got some attention, and other people were into it and all that stuff. So yeah, it's kind of, again, it's like an honor, like, to be involved with these artists, but not only just to get to mix the shows, but it's weird how it happens for me, because it's like 90% of these bands that I end up working for, I don't just do the sound. It's like it goes into production managing, or like managing the band, or doing the records, and like it just, so to kind of be in on all that, and then to have that level of trust is like, dude, like, like you can collect a paycheck and all that other stuff, but to be like, oh yeah, Doc Coyle or Byron Davis or Rob Flynn or Gary Holt, like, at the end of the day, like, these guys can turn around and trust you with their baby, something that they've worked so hard. There is nothing better than that, man, But yeah, it's awesome. I kind of came in on the back end of a lot of it. Killswitch was really blowing up. God forbid was doing good, but some other shit kind of happened behind the scenes. Like, that we could have a whole conversation about that another day. You never know how things turn out, but they had their time, and like everything, like, you go up, you come down, and some bands are still on the up, some bands are plateaued, some bands disappeared and went away, and that's just music business, what happens.
Yeah, of course. Was there any shows around that time where you looked from your vantage point and saw a band who previously were this kind of, like you say, God forbid, just walked in, and then, I remember they were doing the Ozfest and stuff, and Shadows Fall doing the main stage. I think they were in between like Rob Zombie and In Flames one year. I think it might have been above In Flames, actually. And you think that's kind of, was there any moment that you ever looked at it and just went, wow, this is getting really, really popular. This is getting really big.
I wasn't really mixing a lot. Like, I had just missed that Ozfest stuff, and what's funny is just like, I'm pissed about that. That seems to be like my history. It's like, I missed all the cool, 80s and 90s shit with the Bay Area stuff. And then it's like, I missed all the stuff over here, but the friendships and the relationships that came out of that, and hearing like all that shit that went down, and, it sucks not being a part of it from the inception, like some of my friends, and I'm not going to name names, but they're like, dude, if we had you mixing us like on Ozfest, like we would be, the next this or that or whatever. And it's like, okay, maybe, you don't know, like, but no, I didn't really. But as a fan of music, looking it from the outside, yeah, definitely. I mean, Unearth was like one of those bands that I had loved, and now friends with Ken and stuff like that, and I was at their one show at the downtown here on Long Island where they recorded like this music video, and I was there for that. So, and that was probably around 2001 or something like that. But I was a fan of that stuff. So again, like with the whole Metallica thing, to be a fan and then flip the script and kind of be on the other side of that fence, it's pretty cool, like to kind of see the workings. And once you kind of break down those barriers, it's like they're just regular people, like they're cool dudes, like how they are behind the scenes, they are on the stage, and vice versa. So, I mean, there's not really much else I could kind of say about being thankful that I got to kind of live through that really cool shit. I don't have that anymore nowadays, unfortunately. At least I don't think.
Yeah, well, I guess we can talk about the kind of the commercial aspirations of where sort of heavy music is right now. It's probably not the best in the best place, sort of commercially speaking. There's no real new Metallica or anything. But actually, I was going to say the one band that I noticed you have worked with, who kind of are looking to change that, I think, are Five Finger Death Punch. When did you come into working with Death Punch, and what's your relationship with them like?
That was short. It was like a couple of shows. They were this was like right after the first record. It was who the hell was on that tour? I was out with God Forbid. It was like Five Finger, Shadows Fall, God Forbid, and I think there was this other band on there, 2 Cents. And we were playing 500 to 800 seaters. Like, they were not the monster that they are today. And we did a few tours with them. Like, the relationship with those guys were cool. And basically what ended up happening was they had a front of house guy that was out there, and apparently I guess he just wasn't doing it justice. And what I ended up finding out after the fact was, because God Forbid was like second, so it was 2 Cents, then God Forbid, then Shadows Fall, and then Five Finger. And Five Finger had their own console. So I was, number 2 in the lineup. Of course, I'm not getting a sound check or anything like that. I mean, I'm the only crew guy. So I'm on stage, and I had my own mics and drum looms and shit like that. And so by the time I get the front of house, there was 2 minutes, So I'm not traditional in the way I EQ and gain things and all that other stuff. So it's like I'm basically getting the desk and just quickly fucking doing it on the fly. And what ended up happening was I had no idea about this, but like I was out mixing like all of the bands, and their tour manager, this dude Martin Lamb, apparently was like looking over my shoulder like every now and then, like trying to figure out like how the fuck is this guy like out mixing us in like 3 minutes. And then it got to the point where it was like, oh, we're going to limit how many channels you use. And I'm like, okay. Like, particularly the guitars. Apparently, like, everybody was jonesing on my guitar sound. And I used the Audio-Technica AE 2500, and it's a dynamic and a condenser all in one. So they're like, you don't need 4 guitar lines. Like, and I'm like, well, we're on the house board. Like, we're getting on and off stage. Like, if I put a fucking 3-ring circus on the stage, but as long as I'm getting on and off during it, like, what does it fucking matter? So I was just like, okay, so fine, take away 2 of the guitar channels. Easy fix. I carry a Y cable with me, and it actually made my life fucking easier because now I only had to turn, 2 gain knobs as opposed to 4. And I pretty much run the guitars flat, roll off to 100. So it made my life easier. And then they're just like, how the fuck is he still doing this? So they kept trying to like put me in this little box, and I just kept doing it. And then one day I got called to a meeting, and then I get taken backstage, and they were like, how are you doing this every night? And, and they were like, do you want to come and work for us? And that's what happened. And did like a couple of festivals and stuff like that. And I kind of ended up getting fired on that as that the only job I ever got fired from.
Oh, right.
Ivan was going through some stuff, and this was like when the second record was coming out, and we had like a really long drive from think it was Vegas up to Vancouver or something like that. So on one of the, the stops, like he rode on the crew bus and then there was the band bus, and we got a couple of bottles of wine one night. We were putting on music and stuff. And he knew I was not only a live guy, but a studio guy. And he heard, he's like, "Oh, I want to play you the new record." And I was like, "Okay." So he played it and he's like, "Well, what do you think?" And I made like a comment. I was like, I thought like the drum production like was a little thicker, from the first record. And he took that the wrong way, like lost his mind. Like he thought I was like talking bad on the drummer. So between drinking and, 3:00 in the morning, it's like you're trying to explain this, and that like just didn't go over right. And so, yeah, I got sent home not long after. Like, well, if he doesn't like our record, like, why is he working for us? And it was the telephone game. It got twisted around, and fast forward probably a year later, I went back with God Forbid, and we did the Trespass America tour. And I think it started in Denver or whatever. We're walking in, me and the God Forbid guys, and, Ivan was there, and he came running over and he apologized, and respect to him and all that other stuff. And,
yeah,
he was going through some stuff at the time, and, we ended up becoming friendly because we did those tours. He had his daughter out, she was super cool, and she'd be hanging around and stuff. And, like, whatever, shit happens. And it's like, whatever. But like, the thing was, the argument was just funny. He's like, who did this record? He's like, Terry Date did this record. And I'm just like, yeah, all right. We all make, like, I'm not saying that the mix is bad. You asked me my opinion, and I'm a truthful guy. Like, I'm not a yes man. And a lot of bands love that. They're brutally honest. And whatever, and that band is what it is, and it's popular, and
they seem very, very driven, and Ivan seems like a kettle that reaches boiling point pretty quickly as well. But I mean, obviously from before, I'm sure that's definitely true. I feel like he's sort of, like you say, sorted himself out a bit these days, but they are an incredibly driven band for sure.
Yeah, and they're popular, and that's just kind of what it is, and I'm not knocking it, like, is that like my favorite kind of music? Absolutely not. Like, I don't really even listen to music, but I'm not one of these guys that's like a hater of anything. Like, if they're doing good, great, good for them. Like, like, who the hell am I to say like what's good or bad? You know what I mean? Like, that's what the people want, then so be it. Like, yeah, it's music at the end of the day, and to see a band selling records and putting people, in the seats, and bringing bands out on tour and putting other bands in front of them. Like Doc, like with all the tours and the support slots that we did with Five Finger, now he's in Bad Wolves, and it's like they're out there doing all those tours with them and stuff like that. So probably without that, would maybe the Bad Wolves be as popular as they are? Maybe, maybe not. Who knows? Like, no one will know. But at the end of the day, it's keeping rock and metal and real musicians alive, it's helping us. So, it's not a competition, we got to support each other, man, and there's a lot of bands that I mix that I don't like Napalm Death. Like, they know it. I tell them all the time, like, I can't stand mixing this shit.
I was about to ask you about Napalm Death. How much of a challenge is that?
It's so fucking hard. And that's the problem that I had with it. It took me like 2 tours to figure it out. Because for me, like, I like this clean, but yet aggressive, and, like, I like that. And I really didn't know grindcore. Like, I didn't get what it was. And it is noise. There's like 3 parts during the entire set list, like, where there'll be like this rock thing going. And it's like, oh, the mix does sound good. It is there, but then it's just like right back to the noise. You know what I mean? So it took a little while to figure that out. But that's another band. Like, they know that, like, I could care less, like, really about it. But, like, it's about the people, like me and Shane, but me and Barney and, Mitch. And, like, like, it's fun going out on tour with those guys. It's like they never line check. Shane, when I do front of house for that band, doesn't bring a bass cabinet, doesn't get anything in the wedges, nothing. Because he's like, dude, you're the only guy that's ever mixed us where I could feel and hear like the bass a certain way. And Napalm Death is very difficult to mix because the bass sound is not bass. And I set him up with this little thing, it's basically like a radial stereo DI, and he goes into a Sans amp guitar overdrive distortion pedal, not like the Sans Amp bass driver. And it's a blend of that, and so to get those two right, because it's one guitar, one bass player, so to have those guys like fighting up the middle to really get the separation between the drum, the bass guitar and the regular guitar and the drums, and Barney's vocal, like it's, I basically mixed that band in mono, and so everything's just straight up the middle, and to kind of get them to sit in that mix isn't quite easy to do, but
Right.
but it's flattering. You get a lot of the super fans that come up that go to all the shows, and if I can't do a tour or whatever, they'll be like, dude, you're the best. Like, I love it when you're mixing that band, and I go and see it. So it's weird, but it's flattering. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, obviously, what tours you've been on in Napalm, but I've got to say, have you been out with them in the last few years?
No, I basically was doing anytime they came to the States and South America. They had this dude AK who ended up moving over to Slayer. They don't, Napalm doesn't really make a lot of money and stuff like that, so they try to avoid having to fly people in. And again, like with me, doing gigs is not always about money. It's about the gig and like, can I bring something to the table, or who are the people that are involved? And I get what I get paid with Napalm Death, and it's like, not that it's terrible or whatever, but I mean, like, I don't care like what it is. It's like, I just go out because it's like, again, we have fun. They never sound check. We just walk in, and like, even if I run overheads, like the entire input list is 19 channels. So that doesn't even cover my input list just for my drums for Machine Head. So, and that's it. Like, it's super chill, man. Like, it's a good vibe. To me, it's like a vacation. Like, I get to sit around all day and I mix for, an hour and 15 minutes a day. And it's like, so, every project is different, man. But, no, just usually the States. It's been a few years since I've kind of been out with them because I've just been so busy with, Machine Head stuff.
Yeah, sure. Another band I was going to ask you about working with was Possessed. When did you work with Possessed? And, I mean, Jeff, I saw Possessed last year, and Jeff is just incredible that he puts on such an energetic show with, after what's happened to him. I think it's really inspiring. Yeah, I didn't really get to tour with them. I got, once again, kind of like, hey, we need you to mix. I went and did that Bars from Hell tour, and it was Napalm and Municipal Waste. And so we were on this U.S. tour, and then basically we were ending it going on this Barge to Hell. And it basically came down to like, I was like the only front of house guy. Well, that's not true. There was one other dude, this dude Malta, who was doing Behemoth. And so all these bands like started like hitting me up, like Gary Holt, and then I ended up mixing like 7 or 8 bands, and they had to change the entire running order of all of the fucking bands to be it, because I'm not kidding you. I'd be like on the pool deck, like 5 minutes before that thing would end, I'd pull my show file, run down to the, the indoor venue, mix that band, and then, and I was running all over that entire boat. So that's what happened was the Possessed guys came and approached me. And again, it was like, I don't really know anything about the band, but knowing the name and just like you said, the dude's story, it's like, yeah, I'll do it. I was like, fuck yeah, give it a go, and I don't really listen to music, and I always tell people you need to understand the genres that you're going to be mixing. But for me, I just don't do it. Like, I just go, all right, well, this is what's coming in. This is how I'm interpreting it. And that's kind of what it was. And then, so I can't really say that I've got to, really tour with those guys. So just 2 shows out in love the fucking Atlantic Ocean. Nice.
Which is pretty cool.
That sounds pretty good to me. Atlantic Ocean Possessed.
So great. Weird.
I've never been on one of those cruises before.
It's cool as a fan, because like, all right, you're on a boat, you can't really go anywhere, so you're just around your people, and you're hanging out like around with all the musicians and stuff. Like, everybody's access and everybody's kind of on the same page, sort of say, like, everybody's there just to kind of have a good time. And it's weird, like, you're looking out and there's dudes in the hot tub and who's swimming, and that's actually what happened to me. It was like Exodus kicked off the boat, like leave, like we were playing. It was like 5 minutes in, and next thing all of a sudden, like you're in a dark theater and stuff, like, and I don't get motion sickness between airplanes and buses and all, but all of a sudden it was like, whoa, like this is weird. We started pulling away, and I'm like, oh, okay, got my sea legs, and I was used to it. Rob Dukes pukes on stage, which was like the fucking greatest thing ever. But the next day, I think it might have actually been Possessed. They were playing the pool deck, like in the morning, like 10 or 11 or something like that. And like front of house was like off to the side next to like the glass. And I'm just sitting there mixing. It was like the second or third song. I got everything going. And I just like, and I looked, you know, and it's like 60 feet down to the fucking water. And I'm just like, what is going on right now? Like I'm in the middle of the fucking Atlantic Ocean mixing on a cruise ship. Like random, you know, like, you know, again, those head scratching moments, like how the fuck did I get here?
Is it difficult to get a good, I mean, you talk about festivals stages being difficult to get good sound for. And I was going to ask you about the kind of the best environment to get good sound in, but I imagine a ship is probably not one of the better environments to be able to get a good sound on.
No, not really. I mean, it was no different. The pool deck was outside, you know, so there was challenges with that. But no, it wasn't terrible. Believe it or not, it really wasn't. Like, I remember when I did Sepultura up there, like, oh man, I had that mix fucking slamming. And this dude, Rory, who was like I guess he's like the production manager of the, like that part of it. Well, I think now he's like in charge of like the whole fucking thing for these cruises. And he was like, dude, like, holy fuck, man, this mix is crushing. But, you know, I got to hand it to that band. I mean, Eloy, the drummer, was like 21, and that dude was crushing. Yeah, he's amazing. You know, and fucking, you know, it just everybody in that band was just killer, you know. So, yeah, I can't really say that it was more challenging than going to a venue, because the indoor theater was a venue, you know. It was a proper thing, and it had a PA and shit in there and stuff. And it was a little bit more tame, because, you know, it's a cruise ship, and, you know, they're probably doing, you know, Frank Sinatra, you know, night or whatever. So, but I believe they brought in, I think there was a PA that was brought in for that room as well. You know, definitely the consoles and all the, you know, the production stuff, backline and that. But I mean, it doesn't matter to me, dude. Like, every venue you go into, festival, whatever, it's like, I don't go down the rabbit hole with trying to tune PAs and spend an hour. You know, I don't do it. You know, it's just like whatever comes out, and that's pretty much it. And like I said, like with all of the bands that I was touring with, I was never really the headliner. You know, and I never had that opportunity. It was like, okay, you got 3 minutes, go and just do what, you know, you could do in the quickest amount of time. But that was really where I started relying on my tools, my microphones. You know, anybody that really mixes any show for that matter, it's like you need some type of point of reference, and particularly outdoor gigs. You don't really get to hear the PA. You know, you don't get to, like, you know, you don't know what it's going to do. So for me, I always built my mixes around my guitar sound. You know, like what I was saying with the AE 2500, I knew if I roll, you know, put the gain to 10 or 11 o'clock, roll off to 100, you know, and basically brought the faders to unity, I knew that was the sound. So I was able to build the mix around the guitars, which is not normally what people would do. You know, it's like kick, you know, they spend forever on getting the kick drum fucking, you know, like it's a kick drum solo. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, that's really what it was. It was like, okay, put the guitars up, quickly balance everything that way, you know, get the vocal up there and stuff, like fuck all the effect bullshit. Was just get the balance, get the pannings and all that other stuff, you know, and then go back and start, you know, working your way through the mix and cleaning things up. And that's always been my approach. So whether I'm, you know, it was like Napalm Death or Il Nino at Wacken Festival, you know what I mean? Like, it didn't matter. Like, it was always the same approach every time. Yeah, sure. And that's how it works for me. So, if you have something that you know is consistent, then that's your point of reference.
Do you have a favourite venue in the world, anywhere where you walk in and you go, this just is so easy to do. I know what it's going to sound like. I know how it's going to feel like. I know exactly what I'm doing. It's a delight to work in. You're nodding your head, so I'm guessing you do.
There's a few, but I can't.
Right.
You know, I can't just say one. You know, in the States, there's probably two that really stick out. Three, I'm sorry, that really stick out to me. And the first one is the Agora in Cleveland. Machine Head was supposed to be the first band back in there when they redid it, and things got delayed, so we never ended up doing it. But these guys were like super stoked to like get me in there on this Adamson PA, and they're like, like everybody was there. They're like, you know, like, we love it, thank you, you know. But it's a difficult room, but I mean, for that one, it's not just the PA. It's like the people, the crowd. Like, to me, it's the vibe. Sound wise, it's a real toss up. Really, well, I mean, the Fox in Oakland, that's like a demo room for Meyer Sound, because they're just like down the street. So it's just crushing. And you know, obviously all the Bay Area dudes that are there, it's like people that are at front of house, and they're just like, this is like the best sounding fucking show. And like the last time we played there a few months ago, some dude from Meyer was in the audience and bought a ticket. And I wish, and if he sees this, please hit me up. I'm easy to find. Like, I'd love to talk to you. He was just like, dude, I work for Meyer. This was one of the most phenomenal sounding shows. And then third, believe it or not, is the House of Blues in Anaheim. Ripping. Like, it's a difficult room, but like during the day, it's like horrible. But when you pack it out, it's killer. Now, Europe, I'd have to say the 013 in Tilburg, right? I think it's yeah, killer. They have a, you know, dB limit, which sucks balls, but you know, whatever. Yeah, that's a killer room. And yeah. I just saw that they had redid the PA when we played there, and then I just seen it again. They just like updated it even more, and I'm like, I'm really looking forward to get back. I saw that in Front of House magazine, and I'm like, fuck yeah, because I think we were supposed to go back there on this European run with Machine Head. So that, to me, slamming. Like, for some reason, like, there's a few, but you know, those are the ones that you're like, fuck yeah, that's gonna be killer. House crew's great. You know, the PA slamming, the stage is plenty of space. You know, the backstage amenities. You know, all of that stuff. You know, so
yeah. Okay. Well, then let's talk about Machine Head to close up then. Obviously, we've mentioned them a whole bunch of times as we've gone through the show. When did you first start working with Machine Head? How long has it been? And I think most importantly, what people will really want to know is Rob Flynn, the General. How tight a ship does that gentleman run?
We'll get into that one at the end there. That we can go on for a while with that one. Started with them in 2013. I got the call, it was probably April or May, and they were going to go do Mayhem. And Joey, their manager, had called me, and he was like, hey, you know, we want you to come and do Machine Head. And, well, actually, I got to give credit to this guy, Big John. He was mixing Death Clock, and friends with him, and they were going to get him to do it. But he was like, no, call Lagudi, man. Like, he'll kill it. So Machine Head was always doing the TM front of house thing. So he's like going on and on and on the phone about like stuff. And I'm just like, time out. Like, I'm not a tour manager, dude. He's like, well, would you want to do it? And I'm like, fuck no, I'm not trying to learn how to do that shit for a band of that level. Like, So he's like, all right, yeah, we'll let you know. And I'm like, well, there goes that. And then like 3 days later, they called me up. They're like, all right, here's the deal. We made some phone calls. We spoke to some people. We hear you're the shit. So we're going to change our entire structure, and you're just going to do sound. And I was like, whoa, holy fuck. I was like, all right, wow. Cool. So, yeah, that was it. And funny fucking story on that one. This is before I was with Midas. Was with Avid at the time. And I did a whole tour blog and whatever. And typical Machine Head fucking fashion, like our bus like broke down on the way to the first Mayhem gig, like the production day. So it's like, fuck, man. Like, you know, like if you've never mixed a band before, you don't know what to expect. So, once you've mixed one or two shows of the band, it's like, okay, you could go in and like do it on the fly or whatever. So now I'm like, all right, it's Machine Head. We're headlining the second stage. It's like that you can't fuck around here with this. But again, we missed the production day. So my microphones are my tools. So what did I do? I pulled out my Avid offline editor and I built a show file based on the stuff that I use for different bands. It was like, okay, these are the mics that I use and this and that. So the manager, he goes to me, he's just giving me shit. He's just like, so now he's standing in front of me. I got the whole entire fucking band's family in front of house, like Rob, his kids, and Dave's, she wasn't his wife then, but, and like Phil's wife, and just, we're basically in their backyard. And the intro's rolling, and the band kicks in, and Joey, who actually looks just like James Hetfield, very tall, like intimidating looking, just he turns around, he's like, what the fuck? And I'm like, what? I didn't expect it to sound this good out of the gate. You know what I mean? He's like, this is fucking awesome. And I said to him, I was like, do I get to keep my job? And he's like, don't be a smartass, because he was giving me shit before we were going on. He's like, you better not fuck this up, kind of thing. And so from that was it. And that's kind of how the whole Machine Head thing happened. And then once again, as they started learning who I was, it was like, okay, you're going to do this and do that. And, and next thing you know, you're basically running the whole fucking show. But
wow.
Now you want to know about Rob Flynn? What do you want to know?
Well, I mean, I've interviewed Rob once, and I don't tend to get intimidated by... I like to think I don't get intimidated by people just because they're in a band. I've interviewed some pretty big bands before. Yeah. Rob Flynn has an aura about him that makes me not want to fuck up and ask any stupid questions. I was scared to say the wrong thing to Rob Flynn because I felt like, and it might just have been me. It might just have been pulling my chain or whatever, like acting up. I don't know, but I was like, Rob Flynn seems like a man who will not take any shit from anyone.
Yeah, pick up on it for sure.
How's that working with, an absolutely fucking brilliant band and just an incredible back catalogue of music? And I love Machine Head, but Rob scared me a bit. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, you're right, and that's kind of how it was, because like when I went out to California to meet up with them, and they're in the jam room rehearsing. I had met him a couple times before working for them, not like he would remember. So like whatever, and, like that, to me, that doesn't bother me, but he was like, so what do you think of a guitar mics and stuff like that? And I was like, you know what? I was like, I've done this enough now. Like I have I have a thing. And I was like, well, this is what I use on guitar. And he's like, well, really? Like, he's like, I love 57 421. I'm like, yeah, so do I, but in the studio, but live is something completely different. And and he's like, what about vocal? And I'm like, we're going to use this. So I was like, look, this is what we're going to do. We're going to do it my way. And then if you don't like it, we'll make some changes. And he was like, okay. And it was like the next day when I did like a virtual sound check. They come running out the front of house and stuff like that. It was like 9 a.m. and our bus is right there. And of course I'm cranking the PA up and they're, like who the fuck, and so this is the first time they ever got to really hear themselves as an audience member. So Rob's just like, oh, push my, let me hear it a little bit. He's like, okay, whatever you say goes. So that was pretty cool. But yeah, he can be intimidating. We're very similar personality wise, and we get into some amazing fights, which is awesome because we'll scream and yell at each other, tell them to fuck off and vice versa. But we're doing it because we're fighting for the same result. Like we both want the best. So again, like there was like an amazing blowout that me and him got into during the pre-production in Europe. Like when we were getting when I was putting together the broadcast mix, and I'm not even exaggerating about this. You could ask everybody in my band and crew. I was up 4 days straight. And so when we did the broadcast mix, we did like a little like closed MySpace thing, Facebook thing. So I grabbed like everybody's iPad, laptop, like every different medium, and I put it in this little office. And there was like a 42-second delay. So I'm trying to do the mix and EQ and balance everything 42 seconds later. So it was really difficult. and he hated like the 2500, like when we try to like mix it, like, because it sounds great live, but in the studio it doesn't really translate as well. So I figured he was gonna like, you know, he's gonna hate the guitar sound. So he's playing it and he's like, everything sounds great. And then everybody's listening. They're like, oh yeah, it's awesome. Like, this is amazing. And then Rob just goes, but I don't really like my vocal on the clean part. And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, can you dirty it up? Like, do that. And I'm like, well, this ain't the studio. Like, I can't, you know, like, I can't really do that. Like, cause it ain't going to work when you do the heavy, you know, like, and there's nobody, you know, really watching this thing. It was like, set it and forget it. Mm. So we're sitting between two of the vidiots, right? And then we just start like, fuck you. No, fuck you. Like, why don't you go to bed? Why don't you fuck? Like, it was this whole thing. And these two kids are just sitting there in between. Like, he just told Rob Flynn to go fuck himself. You know what I mean? Like, who's going to do that? But again, it's like, it's a strong personality. He knows what he wants most of the time. You know, sometimes you got to tell him what he wants. But he has a vision, you know, like you said, he has this, you know, he was involved in this, like he created this whole thing. And being able, most people don't realize, like, all of 2019, I was in California putting this whole fucking thing together, like the Burn My Eye stuff to getting the auditions, finding the people, like coordinating all of that stuff. And, you know, like, to go, holy shit, to be able to put this together for this band and then take it around, well, Europe and the US, like, you know, and hopefully we get to go and play a lot of these other places that we had to postpone all this shit. But I mean, dude, like 3.5 hours a night mixing this shit, you know, all the other material for the first 2 hours and then the original lineup, you know.
Yeah.
You seen it. It's special, dude. Like, that's...
Man, I mean, I've got to say, the first time I saw Machine Head, Dave McClain was on drums.
Yeah.
And people would talk about Chris Kontos and I'd go, yeah, but Dave McClain is just as good, surely. Like, he's a fucking great drummer. Right. And I've seen Machine Head for years and years and years and years. But I have to say, as soon as that drum roll kicked in at the start of the video with Chris Kontos on drums, my jaw hit the floor. That dude is unfucking believable.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever seen anyone hit a drum kit as hard as that.
Yeah, there's I don't think we've really talked about it. I think Chris has talked about it a few times and stuff, but it was a challenge getting him back in the band. But what I mean by that is, it's like, okay, you know, like, he was always going on about the Dynamo Festival. And it's like, okay, you look at Machine Head back then, stripped down, you know what I mean? Like, ugly and like, but now fast forward 25 years later, look at the evolution, mainly the production, you know, of what was going on with Machine Head. Like, I got the band playing to a click now, you know what I mean? Like, so all this stuff and playing with in-ears. And first off, it was like the first day, me and him, just literally me and him in a room. And he's just like, oh, dude, I want all these subwoofers and these wedges behind me. And like, oh, I don't want to rack. And then I'm just like, ain't happening. I'm like, you're going to do this, 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 this. And he's just like, no. And I'm trying to explain to him, I'm like, there's no way we're going to be able to have 2 drum kits. You know, trust me, get on in-ears. Like, this is going to be, like, he freaked himself out because he was an old school guy, used to hearing it and feeling things. And and we're all telling him, like, dude, you're going to get used to it. You forget that the click is there. Like, you're going to manipulate it yourself. But when it was like, okay, we started out with Davidian and old, like, you know, those click tracks were pretty easy and stuff like that. And we redid all of the Burn My Eyes ones compared to what we did from all the Burn My Eyes songs when Dave McClain was in the band. So it was so funny. It was like, he was like, when we did the intro, he's just like, the click's wrong. And I'm like, and I'm looking at him, I'm like, no, it ain't. Like, it's 8 things. And basically what it is, that intro to Davidian is off time. It's its own thing, like, musically. And like, even like when we were playing Davidian to a click and creating the click with McClain, like, he had trouble at the beginning and stuff. But I know exactly what you mean. Like, hearing it that way, and again, not knocking Dave, you know, phenomenal drum, but you can't compare the two. It's the same thing like with Matt. and the reason why I wanted to put Matt in the band was because I had toured with Matt like for 10 years. Like he was one of my crew guys. I brought him into Machine Head to be the drum tech, but like we didn't end up putting him as the drum tech, and he was like my production assistant. And he's drum tech with the old Nino and filled in. And what I loved about him was, and why I thought he was a viable candidate, was because every time he would get on the drums, he would always play the drums like during line check the way the musician would play them. As well as like if he ever had to fill in for the band, which he did a couple of times, you couldn't tell that it wasn't who he was subbing for. Like he would play the parts accurately to the music. And that's kind of like what we do with, with Machine Head. That's, like it has to have that kind of thing. And when I suggested Matt, Rob was like, no, I don't know. And I'm like, dude, like he's got this, we know him. Like everything was in the positive, with him. But it is a challenge to try to play Chris Contos' stuff. And like, cause even we were thinking, maybe Chris was going to come up and play some, the other Machine Head stuff, and he tried. And again, it's like everybody's got their own style. Like, so to try to do that is not easy. You know what I mean? And I don't think people should really try to do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You got to do your own little thing, like some of your own kind of thing. And that's kind of was with Contos, so, but you're right, but to be in that room that first day, like when there was that video footage out there of seeing them jam, well, I was the dude recording it. Like that was straight up the first time we played.
Wow.
And Logan, other than knowing Davidian, he didn't have practice everything else. So every time I put the camera on him, he's just like, don't film me because I don't know the stuff. But I got to experience this. I'm the first guy to fucking see this and be there from the inception all the way to the end and seeing it through. Like, again, that's going to be, something that lives way beyond me, man. And the stories and the shit that we've got to do and the relationships with Logan and Chris and stuff. And it's awesome, but it all goes back to Rob, man. It's, his thing and the ideas that we try to put together and we work on and, that the things we discuss to try to do, it's to reinvent yourself this so far into the game is not easy to do. Everybody thinks getting a record contract, is easy. No. Like maintaining and coming up with something new to stay relevant. That's the most difficult thing, and I tell kids that too with the mixing. It's not hard to get a mixing job. You got to keep outdoing yourself. You know what I mean? Like anybody can come and take my gig, you could be doing what I'm doing, but I got to stay ahead of everybody else. So.
Absolutely. I mean, I saw it once and I know it was meant to be coming back to London and I was just like, I don't normally go to a sort of two-nighters unless it's something really special. And I was just chomping at the bit to get back and see that show again. So I hope you get to come back to London, Steve. And I hope you get to do it
really do.
without any pint glasses getting chucked at you as well to come back full circle.
I have a tent now. So, like this little tent and it's, well, the top's black, but it's like I have these see-through kind of things and stuff. Because really, like, once I hear the mix once, it's like I'm doing my moves the same. So I can't fuck around because honestly, and I talked about this a couple of times, but people for the shows after that London gig, they were purposely trying to throw beers on the console. Like the next night, Manchester, our lighting guy, Nicholas, because we had a security guard there in front of house and they're there just to kind of stand there. But my lighting guy, he reached down to pick up his bottle of water and he happened to notice there was a dude winding, like probably 3 feet away from me, winding up to try to fucking throw another beer on the other console on my desk. And then it literally happened every single night for the last 4 shows of that. People purposely trying to do that. So that's now my fear is because it was this huge thing that went viral around the world. Dude, even my mother in New York heard about it. And I'm like, how the fuck do you know about this? It seriously, it went everywhere. So now you're going to have the copycatters,
Well, I tell you what, I promise you this. if and when that Machine Head show comes back to London, I'm going to stand by I'm going to keep a bloody eye out for you. I'll be there. Don't you worry about that. And I will be keeping an eye out for you.
Wish we could fast forward to that right now, man.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, man, me too. I'm sure you do. I mean, you must really, really miss it. But to kind of end off the podcast, we always ask our guests a kind of two questions, or well, one question with a two-pronged answer. Best and worst ever day on the job. Have you got one day that you would think stands out as the best, and one day which was just pure hell that you can think of?
Wow. The best? I can count on one hand the best 5 best shows ever, but one that I would say is special, that really kind of is getting to mix the 5th year anniversary for the Ride for Dime, where it was like dudes from Stained and Corey from Slipknot and like just all of these musicians and Ace Frehley, like all of these like, you know, famous people getting up and jamming Pantera songs. So that was actually the first time I got to mix Phil Demel. But
wow. Amazing.
That was at the end of a Mayhem festival. It was God Forbid and stuff. And like, it was so fucking cool being able to like mix these amazing musicians and, you know, play these Pantera songs, of course, but then stay at Dime's house for like, I think we were there for like a week, you know, with Reader and stuff like that. And
yeah,
going through all the guitars and seeing stuff that nobody's gotten to see. And, you know, just I mean, Pantera wasn't a huge band for me growing up. Like, I mean, I liked it, but it didn't make me go over the top until like a little bit later on in my life. Like nothing could, you know, penetrate that fucking Metallica thing, you know, but really knowing the, you know, his impact on music and stuff and what that band was like, this was fucking cool. So that for sure was one of those memorable moments that I was honored to be a part of. Mm-hmm. The worst, having to cancel a gig. To me, that sucks. Like, I've probably pulled the plug, like legit pulling plugs 3 times. And it was really only because, like, the PA just didn't work and there was just nothing we could do. Like, I did a Bury Your Dead show one time and, like, half the PA didn't work. And it was like, we had all these young kids out there. And I was just like, this is going to suck. And we're like, fuck it, let's just do it. Like, we told them, hey, like, you're going to come in and watch the show, but only half the PA works. So, like, everybody just kind of stay on that side. And no one cared. Everybody just had a great time. But there's been a few times where I've had to pull the plug, and it sucks, man. Like, you don't want to do that. But at the same time, too, you don't want to put on a show and have it be half-assed. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, you spent hard-earned money, and it's like if someone's sick or something's not right, like, I get it. You're there. You want to, you know, you want to see it, but after you've kind of calmed down and you stepped away from it, you kind of go, you know what? I get it. Like, I understand that, but some fans don't understand that. So to me, it's a shitty feeling because it's like they think that you're the reason, you know, it's being canceled, and it sucks. So yeah, but shit. But
that is shit. And that's the world we're living in at the moment, unfortunately, where every single fucking gig that was ever going to take place is being cancelled.
But you know what, though? I cannot complain about it because there was one day I did get pissed. It was in Europe. I kicked open the back door. I was just furious as fuck. And there was this huge, you know, like typical European office buildings. It's just all glass. And I see all these people in cubicles. And I'm like on 11. I'm going fucking nuclear. And I'm just going, well, I'm glad I'm not doing that. Like, here I am halfway around the world being paid to do music. You know what? I got it fucking good. So
absolutely. Amen to that. And like you said, I really hope that we get some gigs and we get you back out on the road where you belong soon to do more of these, to make some more of those memories. It's been lovely chatting to you, Steve.
Yeah, man.
It's been really, really awesome. Thank you so much for coming on. I feel like we could have gone on for double it. We could have done an evening with Machine Head length show chatting about all the different bands, but we have to cut it off somewhere, and this is where we're going to cut it off. But mate, thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate it, and thank you.
All right,
thanks very much, Steve. Really, really lovely chatting to you. We will be back next week again for another episode of the podcast, speaking to somebody else who is responsible for putting on those gigs that you love so much. We do have a couple of really, really special guests coming up. So I know I say that every week. Genuinely, though, there are some great... It's going to be a great podcast. Anyway, yes, thank you very much to Signature Brew, signaturebrew.co.uk. If you want to go and grab yourself some beer, you can get 10% off if you put the code ROADCREW into the checkout. Thanks very much for listening. Give us a little review. I'm going to push it again. Give us a little review on the iTunes, would you? Go on, Governor. Go on. Oh, just a little review. And we will be back next week. Thanks very much for listening, and we'll speak to you soon.
Here's a special important message.